We are concluding our three-part series on coaching yourself. And today we're talking about a somatic approach to leadership and how to look at how your body is telling you things in times of stress or in turmoil. And we're really going to introduce this idea of somatic intelligence or body intelligence and talk about practical ways that you can be more connected to your body in work, in your personal lives, in your physical experience during moments of stress, disconnection, or decision making.
I Could Talk to You All Day is a podcast about what it means to be a leader while also being human. I'm Lauren Lefkowitz.
And I'm John Spears, and we coach executives and leaders just like you about shifting from surviving at work and home to thriving in the life you've always wanted.
We're so glad you're here.
Let's get the conversation started. Yo, Lauren Lefkowitz.
Hey, John Spears, how are you?
I am doing really well today.
Excellent.
I love how when we connected earlier, you're like, did you just come from playing tennis? And I was like, pickleball. But yeah, I'm in my I'm haven't taken a shower yet, which is sorry. Not that you could
We're not in the same room.
We're not in the same room. It doesn't matter. But I have my white little polo on and yeah, I feel very Tennessee.
Yes, I was thematically, my therapist and I, who I see virtually, were dressed the same as our backgrounds today. So my background is orange, yellow, gray, and her background is like a sage green, and she was wearing a sage green shirt, and I was wearing an orange shirt. And I mentioned we were dressed like our backgrounds. I like to find sameness when I get on a call with somebody. And I also, when I get on a virtual call, the hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Like that always feels very stranger like to me. So I try to jump right into the middle of a conversation. And so she got on the call and I said, we're both dressed like our backgrounds. And she got a kick out of that. And she's a new therapist to me. And so I was excited that she found the humor in it.
Guess what?
What?
We're also dressed like our backgrounds.
We are dressed like our backgrounds.
Mm.
I love that for us.
So there, Lauren's your therapist. I also dress like Lauren in our backgrounds, okay? So silly, so
So
silly.
silly.
But I have a question for you.
Yes, John.
Today, I'm really excited about today's topic because it's something that I've come to discover for myself and how to do. And it was for so long, I was so disconnected from this part of
Mm.
me. And so to discover it and to learn about it, it's really exciting. But before we actually dive into the topic, and maybe you'll just know the topic by this question, I have a question for you. And that is, when was the last time your body knew something before your mind did?
This is going to sound wonky to 5 years ago me, who came from the very practical, like if I have congestion, I have a cold, that's what my body is doing and that's what my body is telling me. That's the place I came from in my super practical, I'm too busy to focus on my body days. Now, I know that if my left shoulder blade hurts me, I said it was going to be weird. I saw the smile coming. My left shoulder blade hurts, which is a long-standing issue for me, that I have a left shoulder blade issue. If my left shoulder blade is bothering me and I can't get it to loosen up with a stretch, it means I am holding on to something that I have not said a thing I need to say. And whether I'm going to say it to the person who I'm holding something on, or whether I'm going to say it to you as my friend or to a therapist, or I am holding on to something. And if I sit with it and ask myself, what is sitting with me? What is hanging on? I usually can figure it out in a day or two, not right away.
Yeah.
And then once I come at that thing in whatever way I need to, the pain goes away.
Yeah.
It's weird. And I'm listening to me say this, and I go back to before I started doing this kind of work, as my old coaching work was very much more focused on the facilitative side of coaching, and now I combine that with the ontological side, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. And that's where body stuff comes in.
Yeah.
I, I never focused on my body. I was alive and thriving despite the challenges my body was throwing me.
Hmm.
And to hear me say out loud today, my shoulder blade tells me when I'm holding on to some sort of like grudge or unsaid thing. Come on. I don't even believe me, but it's true.
Yeah. No, it is so crazy. And this has also been my experience, not with the left shoulder blade exactly, but I recently made a choice to be in partnership with someone around a thing, and I was aligned. It was like I was going that direction, and I realized like something started happening when I was on on calls where like my body would just get agitated. It wasn't like an emotional thing. It was like I would just get kind of tense, or I'd feel like some tension in my body, and then it would go away. And then every time I had to engage, it came back. And it's not to say that this person's bad, there's anything wrong there. It was a sign that internally I was no longer aligned with the decision that I was making, that I made. And so it's so interesting that even before I caught it in my mind, like my body was telling me something. And it wasn't until I saw a pattern for a few times that I realized what was happening. And so all the time, I recognize that my body is really speaking to me and responding to situations that I'm in, to choices that I'm making, to dynamics. And it's telling me, it's confirming whether this is a good choice or a choice that's aligned with me and not. And I just think it's been such an incredible shift that we likely kind of came to understand this phenomena or just this reality when we both did our coaching program several years ago. But like before that, I would have these, I pull my back. I remember like I pulled my back before doing something I didn't want to do or going on a trip I didn't want to go on. And it was just lots of like things like that. Or I would be in a conversation with someone and I just felt really unsettled and I just couldn't figure out what that was, or I felt this constricting, and I was like, oh, I'm just being anxious. I'm just being me, and this is happening. And to really be able to be aware of what's happening in my body and how it's teaching me and telling me things, I just think is such an incredible, it gives us access to so much.
It does it when we become willing to incorporate it as part of the sort of complete picture
Yeah,
of who we are. I
totally.
think we try to talk things out and we try to justify how things are and what's happening. And we try to problem solve. And we do that all with like words and actions at the expense of recognizing what's happening in
Yep.
our bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is really a fundamental piece of our own training and our own approach. When you think about an ontological approach, it's all about how we're being in the world. And it looks at language and it looks like at our emotions and it looks at our bodies and how we're carrying our bodies and what's happening in our bodies. And it's such when you combine all those things, it's such a powerful approach to living and to being and to life working for us and to accomplishing the kinds of results that we want to accomplish. And so today, we're taking this ontological lens, particularly from the place of somatic learning. So when you talk about somatics, it's really all about the body. Um, and we're continuing our conversation about self-coaching and coaching ourselves and using this somatic approach to coaching ourselves when you don't have access to a coach or when we're in a high pressure situation.
Yeah.
Um, Lauren, I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of when you think about this somatic lens from an ontological coaching perspective, do you have any thoughts about what's different from that from what we think about in terms of like body scanning and a meditation? Like what can you make the distinction between a meditation body scan and what we're actually talking about from an ontological somatic perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you and I will have like similar but
Yeah.
different interpretations of that. Because I was good at body scanning.
Mm.
And I've always felt like you've had a little bit more like in touchness with the somatic side of things than I have. And not that I'm trying to criticize me in it,
Yeah,
but
it just
I
is.
just
Yeah.
it's a compliment to you.
Thank you.
Um, I think that body scanning was what I learned first. And I learned it as a part of guided meditation, which if you have
Hmm.
not done guided meditation, and you've said, I'm a person who can't meditate, same until I discovered guided meditation. So if I were just sitting and listening to quiet music, meditative music, and even counting my breaths, if I'm not also doing a thing, I have a very hard time
Yeah.
like coming into myself. Um, and so for me, the discovery of guided meditations that did body scanning and allowed me to physically focus on the parts of my body was really helpful. Like to notice that my I keep my scalp tight, which is like it's not even a muscle you imagine that you flex.
Yeah.
But as a hypermobile person, we tend to kind of hold everything tight because everything's sort of like loosey goosey in our ligaments and our tendons and our joints. And so um, being able to focus on a body scan where I sort of micro focus on my scalp and then the tops of my ears and my earlobes and sort of go all the way down was really helpful from a physical recognition perspective. And it also is helpful when I don't feel well to distinguish what doesn't feel well.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I just overall feel like I don't feel well, and then I'll realize there's a kink in my back, and that's affecting everything. So that to me is how I understand and live in body scanning. Somatic ontology, and we're using like very
Wonky.
floofy words today, but ontology is the study of being. It's the training that you and I had in our coach training. And the study of being then includes somatics, which is the how the body experiences the world.
Hmm.
And we so often treat that as separate and different than the way that our actions are, the way that our thoughts are, the way that our speech is. So, somatics is our perception of how our body exists in the world. And even as I say that out loud, and even as I know I understand that from a textbook perspective, I still have to put into practice some somatic exercises to really feel like
Totally.
I experience it because
Yeah.
I still feel like that's my area of work is to like get into the somatics and not try to compartmentalize myself and say like, oh, I'll deal with how I feel later. How about you?
I think I make the distinction. I think you said it really well about the distinction between body scanning as used in mindfulness and somatic awareness. I really think about body scanning as like you're just observing what's happening, right? It's just okay, I'm breathing and I'm sensing some tension. And it just stays at the observation place of observation, which is really important for that practice. Um, when we think about somatic awareness, this is really about going deeper and taking a second level of inquiry about it. So it's not just, okay, what am I experiencing in my body? But it's about being in relationship with that and thinking about what is this sensation pointing to? Maybe asking like what emotion or unmet need is coming up? What does this experience remind me of? Um, that sort of stuff, you know. And I've also even
Yeah.
thought about it, and there are books about this too that talk about how your posture and how you carry yourself can impact your mood and how you show up. And so even thinking about, you know, am I always walking around a little hunched over or whatever? But the somatic awareness really goes deeper to like what's happening and experiencing that and inquiring about what's the root of that. What's
Hmm.
underneath that experience? And it can be such a really powerful thing. And some of y'all might be listening to us and being like, I have no effing clue what you're talking about. I have no clue what you're talking about. And it's because we're so disconnected from our bodies. I was so disconnected from my body for so long. I had no clue what was happening. I would
Absolutely.
disassociate. I would just not even be present. And I think you said this earlier, Lauren, when I finally did, it gave me access to so much more living and awareness and being, and it helped me to resolve things in my life that I had no clue were there simply by taking some time and inquiring and really understanding what was happening on the inside.
I'm laughing because as you're talking about this like dissociation that we do, I can remember a time when I was at work and there was a time period of like 15 or so years, a long time, where I had a low grade migraine every day. I since found the right neurologist who has helped with that. Um, but I had at least a low grade migraine every day. And then it ramped up a few times a week. And I had a meeting to go to, and I was in the office. And I thought I would just grab like a plastic bag of ice to take with me so I could ice my head. And I went into the kitchen and we were out of ice in the kitchen. The ice maker had broken and we had ice trays and they were all empty. And I put my head up against the side of the fridge because it was cold, just to give myself like a moment of chilled relief. And I got caught. Somebody came into the kitchen while I was doing it. And I remember her saying to me, "Are you okay?" Because I think I was leaning against the fridge, like the side of my face with my eyes closed. And I said, "I'm just trying to get rid of this migraine before I go into the leadership meeting." And she said, "Have you thought about going home?" And I thought, like, simple woman, why would I go home? I have migraines every day. Like, I was so disconnected
Yeah.
from even trying to treat the migraines in any holistic kind of way, and so disconnected from being allowed to like have the fatigue and pain that came from a migraine that I was like, just real quick, I'm gonna lean up against the fridge, fix this problem, and then I'll go into the meeting.
Yeah.
And that was like one of the starting points of me like just beginning to recognize that I was like cutting myself off from feeling because
Yeah.
I was busy and I had actions to do. And I think so many people in leadership do that.
Yes.
We just like, we don't have time for it. I'm busy.
Yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
to your point, I think you really embodied what I think about this is that so many high achieving leaders live from the neck up. They just live from logic. They live from analysis. They live from mental sharpness over this idea of being an embodied presence. And I think we do this a lot because of cultural conditioning. From a really young age, we're told to like sit still, stop crying, like shake it off, like don't be okay with what's happening on the inside. And so we don't see emotion or intuition. Like some people might be listening to this podcast and being like, "You guys have gone off the deep end." Lauren's talking about her right shoulder blade.
Left, my left.
Sorry,
My
her
right
left.
shoulder blade's
I mean,
fine.
it's a big deal. The left is very different from the right. But like, you know, we live from this place of just always being disconnected from this cultural conditioning. Um, our culture really values speed and efficiency. And in order to really be an embodied leader or a leader who is leading from a grounded presence, you need to slow down. You know, you need to stop doing and start being and start thinking about how to prioritize that. And a lot of times, like, there's this idea that leaders are stoic and they're decisive and they're dominant, and sharing that story is like a sign of vulnerability and weakness. And so I think so many people just choose or they decide not to be connected to their bodies to, frankly, what I would ask people to consider is a detriment to their health and their ability to lead. Yeah. What have you learned about recognizing your body's intelligence over time? Like, what are some signs? You mentioned one, but like, what are some other experiences that you've had that really kind of help shed light on to what's happening internally?
I think the major thing that I've learned about myself is that still to this day, and I have practiced and I have played in somatics for a little while, and I'm good at helping my clients with it. But what I've noticed for myself is that like I will go to a coaching session or therapy session and like just outright make a statement. I'm not going to cry today because I'm on the verge, right? And as soon as as soon as I am asked how I feel, the somatics part kicks in. I
Yeah.
need somebody to ask me. I won't generally identify it by myself still, but I do know when I need someone to ask me. So I do this like self passive aggressive, like, I'm not crying today, just so you know. Right. And that's sort of the signal for my support person to be like, do you want to maybe cry a little? Um, but when I am asked, where do you feel that in your body? I am always going to start with, well, I'm sad about it. I'm disappointed, which is not, that's not answering
Not
the
the
question,
question. Yeah. Yeah.
right? That is feelings. We've got thoughts, we've got feelings, we've got actions, we've got somatics. Where do you feel it in your body? Also, isn't, I feel like I want to cry, right? That's a description. If I am on the verge of tears, where I feel it on my body is that I feel a burning, like in the insides of my eyelids near my tear ducts. I
Mm.
feel a lump in my throat.
Hmm.
I feel my jaw trying to just hold on. I'm not even clenching, it's just flexed.
Yeah.
I can feel my shoulders coming up into like a stoic, use the word stoic, into a stoic position to like try to hold all of my stuff together and all of my toughness. And as I recognize out loud each area that has a sensation and what that sensation is, right? A lump in your throat can be pain, or it can be a blockage, or it can be both. And as I get more and more descriptive, those things start to release.
Oh
Sometimes
my
it
God.
releases into tears, but other times it just like lets go. Like I'm not holding on so tightly to trying to be in control. And to me, one of the most valuable things I've learned in all of my coach training and in all of my being coached experience is that if we ignore that and we do all the things anyway, we never feel good about the things
Yeah.
because we're
Totally.
so triggered physically by all of the feelings we're trying to stuff down that when we get the wins, we're like, yeah, but it sucked getting there.
Oh my God. You hit on so much that is so important that I want to just take a pause and talk about it now as opposed to waiting for it until later. This whole thing about if you're experiencing something and you resist it, it actually gets stronger. It gets more intense for a lot of people.
Which
And
is
if
so annoying,
it's
by the way.
it is so annoying and it persists, right?
Yeah.
I don't like to talk in what is it called? Cliches, but like if you resist it, it persists. But like that is like an experience that I think is fairly true. It resonates with me. It's my experience. And also, when you're able to name what's happening without any judgment, without making it bad or making it mean something or making it about yourself, it releases. It changes. I was in a training this weekend and uh, there was a point in the training where I was really annoyed and I like rose my hand and I wanted to tell the facilitator that I was really annoyed about what she was saying because you can do that in this kind of training. This wasn't like crazy behavior. And like there are some trainings where you're like, that's not how we do it. But like this is the kind of like the container was like okay for me to do that. And she's like, what's beneath that? I told her what was beneath it. And she's like, where do you feel that in your body? And I told her I felt sadness in my chest or sadness in my stomach. And she was like, just be with it. Breathe, accept it. It's not good or bad. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean things are wrong. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It doesn't mean that the story that you tell yourself that you're not good enough and you're full of shame, like doesn't mean because you're experiencing that sadness,
Yeah.
all those things are true. And she's like, "Where do you feel it now?" I was like, I feel it in my throat. And she told me to do the same thing. And after that, all of the tightness, I'm getting like chills thinking about it. All of the tightness, all of the sadness that I was feeling was just gone. And there was nothing. There was like all this space inside. And so I think what you said is so important because we are afraid to name what's actually happening inside of us. You know, I often have the experience when I speak in public to feel tight in my throat, to feel what would a lot of people would call anxiety or fear. And when I just white knuckle through it, I am like just barely getting by. I'm just surviving the moment. And man, that sucks so much. It's awful. It's an awful experience for me just to be like, can I just get out another word? As opposed to when I'm able to be like, okay, I'm getting on stage in a few minutes and I'm experiencing some butterflies in my stomach. I'm experiencing my throat closing a little bit. I'm experiencing my heart rate and like, okay, this is what's happening. And it doesn't mean that I'm gonna mess up or that I'm gonna suck or that whatever, but like the difference in my experience is so completely different. It's such a huge difference.
Yeah. And if you think about that kind of scenario where you're getting nervous, you're about to speak, or you're about to share something important, or turn something in that you've been working on, and you have all of these feelings, and then you do the thing, and somebody comes up to you and says, "That was so great. How are you always so calm, cool, and collected?" It does this like, it messes with your brain
Yeah.
because then you tell yourself, "Oh, I'm good at hiding it. So I don't need to work on it. I just need to keep hiding it."
Yeah.
Long term, that's what leads us to burnout. It's what leads us to physical issues or exacerbating the physical issues we already have. It leads us to putting on a persona in the different rooms that we're in because we're so afraid to be caught being vulnerable or showing that we're nervous uh, or asking for help. And so we keep sort of reinforcing that, compartmentalizing this and hiding it from other people and doing it anyway, and like that's the right thing to do.
Hmm.
And then all the people around us feel bad about themselves because they're
Hmm.
like, I can never do that. Every time I get up, I get so nervous. But
Yeah.
if we're feeling it too and we're hiding it too, and then we're taking the compliment on how well we hide it, which is really the compliment under the compliment, because we're not actually super confident.
You're a really good liar.
Right,
You're a really good
exactly.
faker.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not helping anybody
No.
when we set aside how our body is experiencing our life.
Uh, this we had a whole lot of other topics to cover, but I think this is a great transition to keep on talking about the sort of, okay, I'm having this experience. What do I do? But
Yeah.
we talked a little bit about naming it, but when you think about how to coach yourself or how to sort of have a connection to your body or really get to the root of what's happening in your body, what are some tools or exercises that you think about and you use?
One of the things that I use is breath,
Yeah.
which I never would have said before in the old days. I was a person who would unconsciously hold my breath and then after a while or breathe really shallow, and then after a while I would go like gasp for a big breath because I hadn't had one in a while. So for me, breath work is really important. And when I get into bed at the end of the day, no matter what kind of day I've had, I count and breathe. And I will like sometimes count backwards from 100 and do five breaths, a five count in, a five count out.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll do box breathing, which is you pick a number, 4 or 5 or 6, and you breathe in for that amount, you hold for that amount, breathe out for that amount, hold for that amount, and just keep doing that. Um, so for me, breath work has been really important. And if I can attach something to it, whether it's a guided meditation, whether it's counting, so that I stay focused on it and I don't forget that I'm doing it. That's really helpful for me. The other thing is when I get a tool from someone else, I think I said at the beginning of this conversation that like I'm not great at recognizing this in myself. I am a lot better about receiving the support that I get from other people, who I pay to give me that support. um, but when I get that support, if the exercise has been helpful to me, I will write it down.
Hmm.
And I love the notes app in my phone. It's like my best disorganized friend, and you can search for a keyword, so easy to find stuff. Um, I will write it down so that I can remember that that was a thing that worked for me. Something that I use in particular when my body is feeling like all tight and constricted is that I will do like a big arms wide out, like I'm an eagle, just a big stretch and just hold my arms out as far as I can. And as a hypermobile person, that's pretty far. Um, and until I feel like I have like stretched and opened my chest all of the way. And then I will do what's called a somatic shake, which is where I start with my fingers and I just shake and move my fingers. And
Hmm.
then I move to my wrists and I keep moving my fingers and I add the wrists and then my elbows, I add that and then my shoulder and then I do my toes and my feet and my legs and then I just stand up for a second and shake my whole body. And even as a person who has a number of physical issues, multiple like muscular issues, taking the 10 to 30 seconds to do that full body shake out just loosens everything up
Yeah.
and allows me to focus on like what are the parts that I'm still noticing are not where I want them to be or not in alignment. How about you? What are some things that you do that help you do some self-coaching and self-regulation?
Well, I really relate to sort of my, it sounds so weird to say this. I relate to my being in three ways. But I relate to like myself in three ways that, we have a head, our mind, our heart, or our emotions, and our body. And so I like to think about whenever I'm in a situation or I'm beginning to sort of experience some tension, wherever it is in my emotions or in my mind, I like to say, like, focus on these three areas: my thoughts, my emotions, and my body sensations. So, what am I thinking? What is the story that I'm telling myself? What is the story that I believe about this? When it relates to my heart, what am I feeling? Emotions do I have right now? Where are they located in my body? What physical sensations am I feeling? Am I feeling sort of a heaviness or a tension? Am I feeling a tingling? Those sorts of things. So I think this for me, incorporating head, heart, body in coaching myself is a really important dynamic of what I do and a tool that I do on a almost daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah, so important. And just because you're doing self-coaching and this, little three-part series that we've done on self-coaching doesn't mean you have to be by yourself.
Totally.
So if
Yeah.
you're by yourself and you don't yet feel comfortable with the somatic stuff, call a friend you trust and say, "Can you breathe with me for a minute? Can you count and then I'll count and then you count just so we're both breathing and we're both taking a minute." It doesn't have to be if you're self-coaching, like you're in it all alone, you're
Right.
isolated.
Yeah.
It's you taking the initiative to say, I want to notice this and I want to be with it and I want to maybe do something about it.
Yeah. And to all our listeners out there that might be like, this is very new to me. I'm really disconnected from my body. I have a journal prompt for you or something to consider and to think about as you explore your own body and your relationship to your body, particularly as it relates to it being an early warning system of sort of what you're thinking or feeling and might not even be able to articulate. But this prompt is really, what physical sensations do I ignore most, and when do they show up? And spending some time there in that question, or even the question, what am I sensing? What am I feeling? Where is there tightness? Sort of exploring some of those prompts in your body can be a real gateway to developing a more connected relationship to your body.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great prompt.
Lauren, I could talk to you all day.
Absolutely. All day.
All day, every day. We kind of
We
we
kind of do.
do a lot.
I don't hate that.
I don't hate it either. I'm here for it. Thanks everyone for joining. We so appreciate you being a part of our community. And if you have any thoughts or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to email us. Email us at I could talk to you all day at gmail.com.
We're so grateful you decided to be with us during this episode. Subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues, and join us next time for more Real Talk.